I think we're live, Mark.
We are live.
Happy days. Good to see you.
I'm glad that worked.
Good. So, I've not done one of these lives before, so I'm interested to see. I don't know. Is anybody actually listening in? Can you see anything from your side, Mark?
I can see nothing from my side, but I haven't done I haven't done a Riverside live ever, but I've done lots of like StreamYard lives in my
Okay.
time.
Well, should we just crack on anyway, and hopefully people are listening? And
But yeah, well, if they're not, then we'll just talk to each other.
why not? Let's do it. All right. So, for those of you who are joining us today, thank you for taking your time out of your day for us to talk to you about how to use podcasts to recruit more franchisees. It's with me, Ed Purnell, and my glamorous assistant / co-worker / colleague, Mark Harman.
Hello.
What an intro, huh? Brilliant.
It's the best intro I've had.
I should have prepared one, really, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I'll take glamorous assistant. That's fine.
The man with the hair, something like that. I don't know.
I do have hair.
Excellent. So, I guess we start off by just sharing with people what we're going to go through today. So, a short agenda, really, but I think the main thing we wanted to start off with was to talk about the challenges that franchisors face with franchise marketing and the franchise marketing strategies today. Then obviously we're on about podcasts, so we're then going to talk about how podcasts can help to solve some of those challenges. Also, a week or two ago, I had an interview with Joel Kleber from Jim's Group, who is, I would say, the franchise industry global's leader in what he's doing within a franchisor to build a trust engine, leveraging podcasting. So we've got a few clips to share from him. We'll also talk about what a franchise podcast setup might actually look like, and how you can then leverage it effectively. And then talk a little bit about our solution and how we can support those franchisors that do need some support. And then if anybody is here and we can receive questions, then we'll go through them. But yeah, you ready to go, Mark?
I'm ready.
Always ready. Excellent. So, I guess first off, we should introduce who we are. So I'm going to let you start, mate, and then I'm just going to follow your lead.
I'll go into how we met as well and how we work together as well, and then sort of introduce what you do. So I'm Mark from Red Book Productions. I'm a video producer. I'm based in Hampshire, but I do travel all over the UK. I work quite a lot within franchising. So I've worked with loads of different franchises, like Right at Home, working with the Seasons Art class at the moment. I've worked with Mac Tools in the past. And then outside of franchising as well, I've done some stuff with charities like Heartburn Cancer UK, and also the company that distributed the COVID vaccine called Movianto. So I did all their videos over the course of the pandemic, which was a very interesting thing. But loads of different videos, and then into podcasting as well. So I've worked with Ed at various franchises. We worked together when you were ERA.
Mm-hmm. Era now. Era.
Is it Era now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Rebranded.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we've done some stuff with EF100 every year. We do the videos there. We've done It's Easy websites and
BFA conference this year.
BFA
we've done
conference we did, and then Stagecoach or Trafalgar Education. We're doing a podcast with those, which I'm guessing we will talk about later on.
Yeah, nice, good stuff. Thank you, Mark. So I'm Ed Purnell, and for those who don't know me, I used to work for Era Group, expense reduction analysts, as they were known back then, as the head of franchise recruitment marketing for the EMEA region. I then started a podcast post-pandemic, trying to educate people around franchising, because I felt that the industry needed to sort of tap into some new avenues, really, and help spread the word. So I got to know a lot of the franchising industry from there. Then started a business called The Franchised, where we help franchisors to fine-tune their franchise recruitment. So a lot of marketing strategy and sales strategy at the front end, followed up by a lot of content creation at the back end. So working with a whole host of brands, from sort of smaller ones to get their strategy right, like Summit, through to Era. We're back working with them, as you mentioned. CZ websites, the Cat Butler, Trafalgar Education. Oh, there's a whole host.
You forget, don't you? There's so many.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Just over the years, worked with loads of them in various different guises. Yeah, Jackson's is another one that I done a little bit of work with. So yeah, that's me. If anyone is interested, I also like music a lot, so I've got guitars in the background. Love food, and yeah, Belgian beers. That's another thing I love.
Nice.
So yeah, there we go. So come on, slide. Move on to the next one.
Technology has failed us. There we go.
So we're going to talk about the challenges franchisors face today within franchise marketing. So I've put together a few bullet points, but feel free to chip in if you want, Mark. But I think building trust in today's world is really tough. People have got really short attention spans, and it takes a lot to build somebody's trust, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of messaging. It's quite easy to feel like you're being sold to, you know. I think a lot of people are quite savvy in today's world, and so when you put out your messaging, if you're overly salesy, people know what it is. They know that it's just content created just to try and get them on board and spend their money. So that's kind of the first thing that I see is a challenge that some franchisors faced. It's also tough to stand out. I don't know about you, Mark, but I do a lot of kind of audits on franchise brands and their marketing messaging, and I'm always looking, every time I see a new brand, I always take a look at what they're doing and what their messaging is. And a lot of the time it's the same messages. It's things like be your own boss, do it, start a business for yourself, not by yourself. There's loads of that kind of messaging out there that pretty much every brand says the same thing. There's also all of the benefits of joining the networks. It's all pretty similar. So it's really difficult to find those differentiators. I don't know if you've noticed that as well, Mark.
Yeah, well, everyone says work for yourself, not by yourself. And I actually had someone in an interview once said you work by yourself, not for yourself, and then corrected himself. I can't remember who that was, but it was quite funny. But everyone does say that, and it is kind of like the same messaging across the board. And I think like the only differentiators I see are the franchisor themselves. And when I interview franchisees, often why they join a franchise is because, like they say, had a really good conversation with the franchisor, or I'd followed the franchisor and followed their story, and I was really inspired by them, and that's a huge reason. Or that another differentiator is they look into a sector that they like, whether it's like food and beverage or whether it's care franchise, and they see themselves in that, so that they're already looking for something within that. And I think those are the only differentiators really, because a lot of the marketing messaging is always along the same sort of lines.
It's about the people, isn't it? I think a lot of the time that's the way that you can stand out. There's some new brands that pop out that have got a new trend or a new kind of something that's quite zeitgeist that they're tapping into. So that does differentiate them for a while until more of those types of brands come out. But yeah, it's that, I think that's the key one. It's tough to stand out. Why are you different to the next brand? It's a challenge. So the next one is, I think every brand will face this at some point, but there's a real negative perception of franchising even still. And I think that's because Joe Public, the general, consensus is franchising is either the big F&B brands. So I always coin the phrase sort of, it's either McDonald's or it's a scam, because there's lots of MLMs, multi-level marketing companies out there that, they don't look after the people that come on board as well as the franchisors that I've seen and engaged with. They don't offer the same level of support. So even if somebody comes on board and is in your process and quite likes the opportunity and likes the sound of the business, again, trust is part of it, but not just for them, it's for their friends and family as well. So the friends and family still have that negative perception of franchising, and they've only had a second-hand bit of information from the prospect saying to them, it's a great idea, and they go, no, franchising's a scam. And it, when you have people around you saying that, it puts that doubt in the prospect's mind. So yeah, that's a big one I think for me is this negative perception around franchising.
Yeah, you mentioned that in your conversation with Joel. We're not going to show that clip, but if you might make the whole interview available on some form.
Yeah, I will.
But you mentioned like the level of trust, and like people sort of see MLMs and like they think, oh, it's a scam, because MLMs, I think, from what I've seen, is kind of like all they're interested in is recruiting more people rather than the service that you're offering.
Yeah, the pyramid
So like, if
scheme
a
sort of
franchise didn't
fear.
actually offer a product or a service, it would just be absolutely pointless. Whereas, MLM seems to be more focused on just recruiting more people all the time, and the money flows upwards.
Yeah, exactly. It's something I've always said around franchising, is that the franchise fee itself, which people see as the money maker for franchisors, that's actually going towards all of the training setup and all the resources that a franchise brand has. Where they actually make money is through the managed service fees or royalties over the course of the 5 or 10 year agreement period. And that's a good thing, because it means that if the franchisee is successful, the franchisor is successful. You know, the franchisor's success is dependent on the franchisee's success. So
Yeah.
content creation, then that's the final thing. So I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to hear it, but creating this content that we're going to talk about today is actually really important, but it's so time consuming, right? Especially if you get it wrong, and especially if you do it on sporadic occasions where you just go, right, we need to do a video. You put the time and effort in to do one video, and that's it. That's the one thing. But yeah, we'll see. But consistency is key, and it's difficult time wise to actually do that. So I think those are some of the challenges that I see out there at the moment.
Yeah, I think franchising's come a long way in terms of content creation. I've been sort of working in franchising since 2015, and video seemed to be very much like a nice to have, not a must have, when I first started. And now it's everyone seems to be doing it in some form. But the thing I think is holding people back is the consistency of it. So they might think, oh, I'll make one every sort of now and again, or I'll make one and that'll be enough. But you need to be doing it relentlessly again and again and again, and on different platforms as well, as we'll talk about in a bit, just to get your message across and seen by the right people. And
I think
franchisees.
All of these link in together really, and I think trust is probably the core of it. So I like to think of it as a trust engine, build on a trust engine, because if somebody's found a brand and then they go doing their research, they're gonna want to see that. Like blog posts are always the thing. If you go on somebody's blog post page and there's only one article from February 2021, you kind of go, they're not that active, right? It's the same on the socials. And on that point, I pulled a few stats that I think are quite interesting to think about and consider. This is from Sprinkler.com. They did some research around social media marketing and statistics around it. One of the key ones that stood out from their report was that 58% of people discover new businesses via social media. That's quite a high percentage, bearing in mind we all sort of assume it's all through Google that people find them. But actually, I think if it's within their general sphere of interest, people are on social media quite a bit. And if a company pops up that's within their sphere of interest, they then might go on a journey to learn more about them. So being ever present on social media is probably something we all know we should be doing more of. But that is that time challenge sometimes that can be difficult. It's quite a high percentage of people that find businesses in general through social media, but I think the same applies to franchising.
I think a lot of people would find those businesses via actually experiencing them as well. So like if you go to like your kids' dance class or something, that's often a franchise. If you go to a lot of food and beverage brands are franchises as well. But then like it's how do you build that relationship after that initial contact as well? So like they might look them up on social media, and the second point of contact might be their experience from consuming the content.
Yeah,
they're putting out.
If we're looking at kind of where people find franchise brands, I think there's only a certain specific type of person that ends up going on the franchise portals, right? They've probably already got a little bit of education, which is around franchising, which is a bonus and a benefit. But also, I think the majority of people that know about franchising typically are probably more at that kind of investment level. They've had some interaction, friends and family, and I think there's only certain brands that do well with that. I think the kids' activity sector's probably the main one that I look at and think actually they struggle a bit more on the franchise portals because they're lower level investment. They're more reliant on the person investing the money to do the work as well. So I think that's where there's sometimes a challenge there. But yeah, it's interesting. So the next stat that I had was, and I know this says B2B buyers, but another piece of research people did to find out how people are building that kind of trust in a brand. And so 70% of people in a B2B environment, and I think franchising's B2B, right? Like you're investing in a business model. There is an element of B2C to it, but it's still predominantly business. So I think this is relevant. But they spend 70% of their buying journey doing their own research before talking to vendors. That actually surprised me a little bit. I thought that they would maybe just do a little bit of research and then start talking to people. But actually, they're going out there trying to find reviews, I guess. We all know about Trustpilot and Google reviews. People are doing that. They're trying to find out what other people think of this brand before they do it. They're trying to... They're hungry for content, I think. I know when I go in and buy anything in... And I might be odd here slightly, but just accounting software, I spent ages trying to figure out between Xero and QuickBooks which one was the right one for me, before I even got into that call. Because I think I have this sense of they're just going to start pitching to me. So I'm actually going to do my research first and almost make my decision beforehand. And as long as they're not maniacs... or going to charge me too much, I think we're in, sort of thing. So that actually probably rings true, but it did surprise me to see that. So yeah, as another interesting one. But I guess the reason what sparked this conversation between us to put a webinar together was something that was said by Daniel Priestley at the BFA conference in November, the British Franchise Association conference, annual conference. And that was that Google have this golden rule in building trust within a buyer at the front end. 7, 11, 4. And I'm going to dive into that now, but it's a good one to remember. What that actually is you need to have built trust in a buyer prospect in the franchising world. You need 7 hours of engagement, 11 touch points and 4 locations. So those 7 hours of engagement can be videos that you've got on the website, YouTube, wherever they may be, blog posts, webinars, brochure. I think you can also include some of the conversations along the franchise recruitment process as well, so a discovery call and things like that. But what I sometimes see is that it's just reliant on a brochure and the calls rather than some of that other element, which is where the 7 hours don't always get hit. So it can be a challenge to hit those 7 hours. The 11 touch points, again, that can be the same kind of content really, but those 11 touch points are important to build that trust. And then 4 channels, locations, yeah, I've already covered that really, haven't I, by saying it could be on portals, could be on YouTube, could be on podcasts, it can be on the website, whatever it may be. So, go on, you want to say something then? I can feel it.
Oh yeah, I was going to say TikTok, Instagram, like the shorter form content stuff as well. And we'll talk about this going forward. If you're making long form content, it's a really easy way to make short form stuff. And there are ways to make stuff with 'cause we're going to talk about the time and stuff like that. But with limited time, you can put together loads of little bits of content really easily.
Yeah.
And I will give an example later that I did last week.
Cool, nice. So, how to apply that? I think the key things are to create meaningful content that's actually going to add value and help you stand out from your competitors. Ensure that you've built in multiple interactions, and it doesn't always necessarily need to be, like you say, long form content, but multiple interactions throughout the kind of journey is important to build out, and also use those different channels, different avenues to reach them and connect with them really. But probably the most important thing across all of that, I think, in the background is that you've just got to stay consistent with it, right? Because otherwise it drops off, it becomes old, and the trust level kind of drops a little bit. So yeah. So I'm going to let you do a bit more talking now because
Yeah. I can tell your throat is killing you.
I'm harbouring a cold. I'm at the back end of it, but yeah, I'm going to let you do a little bit of waffling now. So yeah.
One of the things you said about staying consistent as well is, I think you just need to build it into your like daily routine or weekly routine, is like when you're going to do it. So for me, I make episodes of the video show, and I find that Mondays are a really good day for me, just personally, because Mondays always have to pick my son up from school, and that's just a day I'm always in the office. So that's a really good day for me just to record stuff. And also I've got a setup here, so I've got an audio setup and a video setup here, so I can just sit down and make videos really, really easily. But I've also, like, before I had this set up here, I would have like my walk to work would be like 10 minutes. And that's a really good time for me to create content. So think of times throughout the day or throughout like certain days in the month or days in the week where it's good for you to create content. I think that's just sort of find those little spaces where you can make content. And I think there's certain people within franchising that do this really well.
Oh, totally.
Cool.
Every event's an opportunity as well. Like you see Amrit, he's constantly walking around with his phone in the air, right? Love it.
Anytime Tim Morris is on a train, photo, and there's a post there, isn't there? So
yeah, but to be honest with you, I've experienced. I might be jumping the gun a little bit here, but I feel like it's a relevant point to share this. So when I started that podcast, I did two years, 100 episodes, and I produced them weekly. And it was tough, time consuming, but what I got off the back of it was I became known within the industry. I would turn up to events and people would be walking up to me, and it was almost like a lead generator, just to start conversations, because people were so used to seeing me on every single week, so familiar with me and my style and my approach, that they felt like they knew me. One person in particular was like, I feel like I know you. It might seem really strange to you, but I follow everything you do. And I still get it quite often. People say, I always see you on LinkedIn. I won't ruin the rest of it, but yeah, I've got more stories around that as well that's come off the back of the podcasting work that I've done for myself and other brands.
Cool. So let's talk about how a podcast can help. Can you put the next slide, please, Bob?
There we go.
I don't know who Bob is. So yeah, the first thing is just building trust. Like, I think this is huge in terms of any sort of content, but podcasting as well is really, really good at it, especially if you're recording, like doing videos of the content as well, because people can see and hear you. People get to know your personality. People just sort of feel like they trust you over a period of time. And if you do it for a long enough period of time, people will go back and watch the old ones and then just sort of go back and watch it. I found at the moment I'm watching a series on YouTube called An Ektachrome Christmas. So it's a film photography thing I watch on YouTube. And every Christmas he posts an Ektachrome Christmas. So for just December he shoots this certain film stock called Ektachrome. But I go back and watch the old ones. So I think if you're creating content like that, people will go and search for your old content and rewatch it and build trust. Like Ed said earlier, he's had people come up to him and say like they feel like they know you. And on my podcast it's not a franchise podcast, it's a film photography podcast, but I was on a train and someone come up and was like, are you Mark from The Full Frame? And I was like, yeah. And that was quite cool that people come up to me and knew me through my content. And yeah, that's when you know it's working, I think. It's if people come up to you and they feel like they know you, but you've never met them before.
Yeah. But I think it builds credibility as well when you...
Yeah.
So I want to share a kind of quick story of how we started working together. So there was two people that I was following while I was at Expense Reduction Analyst, now Era Group. And that was Mark and one other person, Jack Gaisford. Fantastic guys for me at that time, because I was learning video editing and they were just telling me how to do it. I was like, mugs, why are they giving me all this free information on how to produce great content? Like, this is great, this is brilliant. But what happened is it eventually came to a point in time where I actually needed to go a level higher in terms of quality. It was a bigger project and I didn't know how to tackle it. I couldn't do it myself, basically. I didn't want to do it on my own, if you see what I mean. And so the two people I reached out to, because it was easier, human beings follow the path of least resistance. It was easier for me to go to you and Jack to have a conversation than it was to go and search on LinkedIn or ask a load of other people for recommendations and go through all the calls and try and understand whether I liked them or not. I really liked you two, and I was like, one of them's going to tick the box financially as well, and I'm going to get on with them.
That was me.
And you got lucky. You got lucky. But
What happened to Jack then? Jack's too expensive.
He was at that
Jack
time. Yeah,
too much then.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But also just personality wise, actually felt like I knew him. But when you talked to him, he was a little bit salesy at the front end. But works for everyone.
Yeah, I know exactly who you mean. Yeah. So the next thing about is enhanced personal branding. And I can think of a few examples within franchising that do this really, really well. Ryan from Teslom, I talk about a lot. He's very much front and center of Teslom's marketing. And when people think of Teslom, they think of Ryan. And then another one from a few years ago, he's not sort of the face of the brand anymore, but Ken Deary at Right at Home was very much the face of the brand. And when I spoke to franchisees of Right at Home, they would say Ken was the reason I joined. Like above other care franchises, it was always Ken. Everyone mentioned his name. So if you're putting yourself front and center of all the marketing, and Joel talks about this in the interview with Ed as well, the franchisor who put himself front and center, that really does help because people feel like they know you, your experience, you're building your own personal brand. And then engaging potential leads. So it's just another way of just nurturing those leads across different platforms. So if you're creating a podcast, for example, there's other ways of like repurposing that content. So if you've got an interview with the franchisor and franchisee, you can get little clips. So if you've got an hour-long episode, you can get like 6 to 10 clips that you can put out on Instagram, onto TikTok. You can turn little bits of those into written content, into blogs, so people will find that content as well. And there's loads of other little things that you can do just to like repurpose that content, like individual posts with little quotes on and stuff like that. And it's just as much as you want to do with it, that's how you do with it. And you sort of engage all your leads like that. They will find you in some respect, and they'll find you on different platforms as well. And then, I spoke about maximizing content value there as well. So, something I don't do is email newsletters, but I know a lot of people that do that really well and really effectively. That's one I didn't mention.
Yeah.
But it's just getting as much, like squeezing as much juice from the content as you possibly can. And there's so many ways of doing it. But if you're creating long form content at the top, like a podcast, it just makes everything else so much easier.
Yeah. So something I used to do at Era was, so you'd have an email nurture campaign. So after a prospect doesn't get into a conversation with you, or you can't get hold of them for whatever reason, you put them into an email nurture campaign, and at that point you can put in the testimonial videos, you can put in their interviews with staff, whatever it may be, bits of content that kind of build that out. But then after they've gone through maybe a 12-week sort of series of emails, after that they can then go into your newsletter thing, which is maybe a monthly thing, and each month you could put in something new or different that has come from the podcast. Maybe it's just a little clip that's come from that. There's something really pertinent or interesting about that individual. Maybe it's how they managed to achieve 30,000 revenue in the first 3 months, whatever it is, right? I don't know what that story is, but those little stories that come out from creating regular content could be really useful to fill that gap, because that was a challenge for me, right? To try and think of what we can talk about this month that isn't just a sales pitch, where we can actually share a different story. I think that's an important bit to sort of consider as well.
And if you're doing that content over a period of time, I know you speak about this with Joel, and we will be sharing a clip about this, but the more you like the over the period of time, people might not be ready to buy like right then and there, but if you're nourishing that relationship for years or months, or like however long, and you're just sort of keeping contact with them, they will remember you. Whereas someone who's not doing that, they're going to totally forget who you are and not remember that relationship at all. But if you're constantly nourishing and nurturing that relationship, it's going to be worthwhile.
I had somebody 3 years later, he was the CEO of some airline company in Sweden. And it was, so those monthly newsletters would go out to him on a regular basis. He kept on our system, and it was a Christmas jumper newsletter that went out that he then said, "Oh yeah, I remember speaking to you, Ed. I saw you in the picture, and I wanted to reach out, and I'm ready now." Back then, it wasn't the right time, but so even the people the prospects that you've spoken to, if you put them into the newsletter feed, as long as they're happy to be on there and continue to be on there, it just reminds them that you're about, and it's all about timing and being there at the right time. And that can be social media, but newsletters are just as important. So yeah. So I interviewed Joel Kleber from Jim's Group. So in my opinion, from what I can see, I think he is the leader in the franchising industry internationally, leveraging content or content marketing strategy to recruit franchisees, and podcasting plays really heavy in what they do. Jim's Group, if you don't know about them, they started in 1989. It started off as Jim's Mowing, but since then they've now got 50 different divisions covering all sorts of services. Joel heads up that marketing for all of the brands, and the slide doesn't say it properly there, but they've got 5,000 franchisees in their network, but 2,000 of those have been recruited in the last 6 years, which is pretty impressive, and that has coincided with his content marketing strategy, where it's video first, podcasting first, sharing the stories, being super open up front to build that trust engine out. But you've picked out a few clips you liked, didn't you, mate?
Yeah. Let's play them.
Did he want to keep that persona and keep away that personality side of things? Was it difficult to get him into a conversation or on camera, you know? Because I know some business owners are kind of afraid to get on screen and show kind of the other side of them, the personal side of them, you know?
Well, it was hard initially. Like, if you look at our videos I started doing back in 2019 to now, he's completely different. Like, he's a really good trained media performer. He knows to be up and about. Jim's an extreme introvert, so he does not like doing it, but he knows that it's good for the business and good for the brand, and that's how he looks at it. So that's first for him as well. But in Australia anyway, franchising gets a bad rap. So back in 2019, there's a lot of stories in the media. If a franchisee has a bad experience, they go to the media, it gets national attention. There's hardly any good stories about franchising in Australia. So for me, it was I always used to go to him, you've got to be transparent about what we do. Because all the stuff that you hear online now, I used to hear internally all the time, and it was never online. So all that passion and stuff, I was hearing every day, but it was never online. So I was literally just basically capturing what he's doing already internally and putting it in an online environment, but also finding formats that work for him. So I don't do scripts with him to camera. I don't make him really read anything to camera. I find that for him, he likes just answering questions and doing podcasts, right? That's the format for him, and that works for him as well. And he's very time poor, so it's literally come in, answer a few negative comments on TikTok or this and that, and then away you go. But I think, no, he never said that to me, but he doesn't like doing video, and that's just the fact. He's an extreme introvert, and he's really shy, but he just knows the impact it has for the business and it promotes the brand, so he sort of puts that aside and does that.
I think I can relate to Jim here.
Yeah.
Because when I first started making videos, I did not want to be on camera. And a bit of advice I received from an actor friend of mine that really, really worked for me, and it works for me to this day, was it's just sort of another more confident version of yourself. So it's like having a phone voice. And then for me, like, that clicked, because before then, like, I did drama and stuff at school, and if I was acting or speaking on camera even, I had to do a different voice. So for me, it was just like, I can still be myself, but just sort of click into that. And now, even now, like, I will be sort of like off camera, I'm very much like lower energy. And then on camera, it's kind of like, okay, that's a different person, like a different persona, but a more confident version of me. So I think where people have met me, like in real life, they'll watch my videos and meet me in real life. They'll be like, you're a lot shyer than you are on camera.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
There was some, so the stuff that he does with Jim. So sometimes it's he'll sit down and just talk to Jim and ask him some questions, and Jim's very sort of laid back and just gives all the answers. They're not afraid to put all the nuts and bolts of what goes on behind the scenes into that conversation. But they also just, while he's got him, he'll just he mentioned it there very briefly, but people will put on things like on TikTok, the videos that they put out there, they'll say, isn't it just a scam? It seems expensive. What are you actually going to get for that sort of money? You know, mowing costs too much money, like Jim's group charges too much money, and then Jim would just look at it like and instantly in the moment react and just go, I don't think it's expensive. It's not that bad. Like some people charge more, some people charge less, but you know, we want to be fair to the franchisees that are in the network, and we've found a level that works. We've got a backlog. I think he had some ridiculous number of queries for people to mow the lawns that they couldn't service. And just from that one negative comment within there, you've got 3 or 4 key core sales messages that don't sound like their sales messages.
Yeah.
They're oversubscribed on people wanting to use their services. To prospective franchisee, okay, there's a market opportunity. You know, they're pricing it right to make sure that the franchisees are being paid fairly, or there's profit in this opportunity. You know, it's really interesting to sort of watch their videos and learn from them and what they're doing, because I think they're doing such a great job. But
in talking about like answering those horrible, like gnarly, horrible questions, I was filming with Sarah Krezel from Creation Station earlier in the year, and she was one of the first people I've worked with that asked questions about like the finances and how much they paid for the franchise and how long until they got their money back. And I think a lot of times like franchise kind of want to avoid that in videos, but by getting past that and like getting like the horrible questions out of the way and showing those horrible questions, that really does help build trust as well, because it's like, well, if they're answering the really horrible stuff, like there's not much else there that they're not discussing. So if you're just talking about everything, no matter if it's good or bad, or like what are the good experiences, what are the bad experiences, what went well, what didn't go well, if you're just getting that out of the way, then people know exactly what to expect. So if you're telling people this is what's going to happen, this is going to be hard, this bit, then like they know what to expect, so it doesn't seem as bad.
They've gone to the extreme, so they've filmed Jim for a full day. He's down in his robe.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that video. It's about an hour long, but it is Jim is in his robe. He's making his coffee and he's explaining why he has this type of coffee and what he has for breakfast. He goes out and feeds the fish and all this sort of stuff. And you're like, okay, so he's just a normal human being. It kind of takes the people off the pedestal, and you feel closer to them, sort of going on that personal branding piece, like you mentioned earlier. And I think that can be learned and leveraged by any size franchise brand, really. So yeah interesting. Definitely. So the next little clip, should we go to that?
Yeah, go on.
What have you put here as the title? More content, the more they consume.
At any stage, from the short form ads, whatever it is, I just want to get them into the YouTube channel, or want to get them into the podcast, because I know that will bring them along the journey and they'll come into us ready to go. And the great thing about it is the more content we find they listen to, the far better franchisee they are, because it's a qualifier. You know, they're not going to be someone who listens to it and here's a franchisee says, oh, it's great, but you've got to really work hard, and then think they're going to come into the system. It's going to be really easy for them. So we find that the more content they listen to and consume, the better prospect they are.
Yeah, I love that end bit.
There was a lovely short clip, and I heard that like when I was going through it, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what we want to talk about on this. So like the more you're putting out, the more they will watch and they'll look out for. So if it's just like your videos, if you're putting out maybe like even a book or something like that, they'll go to the book, they'll go to TikTok, they'll go to Instagram. Once they're into what you're doing, they'll try and find you everywhere. And if you're doing it well, they'll really like buy into that. And the more you put out, the quicker you build trust. The more trust you build, the bigger, like the stronger the relationship is.
There's quite a few franchisors that I speak to that I know actually most of the ones that I speak to that talk about this. What is a good franchisee? And it's always the ones that have done the research. Like if they've done the full research, I've looked at this, I've watched this, I know about this, I know this. They're almost further down the line already. They're a lot easier for you to continue moving along the journey and converting to franchisees. And it's a good signal for you as well. So if they've done all of that, it's a bit of a buying signal. You can go, okay, so you've listened to the podcast, you've watched some videos, you've read all of our blogs, you've got all the questions lined up. This is great. Rather than we've all had those calls where it's so what is this? It's a franchise, is it? Oh, okay, I've not heard. I don't know what that is. You know, They can be good if you get the right person and have the right process in place. But if you can get them loaded up on information at the early stages before they've even had a conversation with you, it's even better. It's like that B2B buyer thing. 70% of people have already sort of made their decision before they buy. So feed them with that information so that they're better prepared for those conversations. Nice. I feel like this is a surprise because I can't remember which clips you've actually clipped out for us. So
we spoke about this an hour ago. So.
Cool. So years and years of content. Right, let's get into this one.
Cool. Yeah, we spoke about this earlier, but yeah,
they're watching for years. Like we've had guys watching for 6 years, 5 years, watching all the stuff we put out. I had one guy tell me the other day he went through every single one of our Facebook posts, and that would be nearly impossible. It's thousands. And was reading the comments, reading all these things and stuff just before he even came into training. So people just want that extra reassurance. And for us at our level anyway, if it's $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000, that's their life savings. So they need as much reassurance as possible. And the great thing for us is like our competitors in Australia still don't get it. I promote this stuff online pretty openly, but it is hard work too. You've got to really commit to it and see the content creation if they use you or whatever channel they're going to use. And it's not a cost, it's an investment. Right. And these assets that they create with you, video assets, these long form podcasts, they're things that live on your YouTube channel and someone 3 years down the track is going to watch that interview. And that could be the thing that then makes them decide to come into your brand. It happens a lot. A lot of the day on the road stuff we've done 5 years ago, that video is still cracking up views and people are watching that video from 5 years ago, but that's been the one that's getting into training today.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you just make content over years and years and years, people will look back at all of it and like just keep consuming it and just I did speak about this earlier, so I think that just sort of backs it up. It's nice to hear someone else say it.
It's evergreen content, and I've got an example of where that's actually been really beneficial for me. So the Disenfranchised podcast, the one I originally started off, did 100 episodes. I'm still getting listens on that podcast. And interestingly enough, I was at the BFA conference and I sat down next to Athena, a lawyer. Her first role was in the franchising arena, and she wanted to learn more about franchising as an industry. And she said to me, "So yeah, I kind of know you because I listened to your podcast to try and educate myself around franchising." And I was like, "Wow, people are still listening, still getting value and benefit from it." And I stopped promoting it a year and a half ago. So it becomes evergreen content. It's stuff that can continue to add value to your process. It can continue to add credibility to you as an individual and as your personal brand. But it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. And I think I think if I remember right, the next clip, we haven't got a next clip.
No, that's
okay. Okay. Well, I talked to Joel about it a bit as well, and I've lost my train of thought slightly now. But
I think it'd be great to make that whole podcast available to people.
I'm going to, there's lots in there. Yeah, there's lots in there. Really valuable stuff. Joel knows his stuff, and he's a smart guy who's gone about proving that it works really well. 2,000 franchisees over the last 6 years. Yes, they're a big company, but they'd got to 3,000 since '89 when they franchised. So effectively almost doubled it within 6 years of a brand that's been going for over 30 years, 35 years, something like that.
Just because they've relentlessly created content. They hired a video producer, didn't they, to just create content every single day.
They do. Yeah, they do a variety of stuff. But, they've got the money to be able to afford to cover everything. And they produce content pretty much every single day, like that goes out there. And that can be costly. But if you set it up right, it could be good. And I guess that ties into what could it actually look like for brands, right? Look at that. Smooth segue.
It's almost like I knew where this was going, yeah.
Brilliant. So I'm going to let you take the lead on this one a little bit. I feel like I've been waffling.
So there's 3 to 4 different options if you want to do a franchise podcast setup. So the first option I think is like doing it all online. So you can use something like Riverside, which is exactly what we're doing here. So it will be a conversation between two or more people, or maybe just one person talking, where you're recording it through your webcam and then you get it edited and then you post it across different social medias. There's positives and negatives to that. The positives are it's really easy. You don't have to like leave your desk. It's relatively cost effective because it doesn't cost very much to pay for a Riverside, and then you've just got to edit it, and you can edit it yourself or you can send it to someone else to edit. You don't have to travel anywhere, so that's a positive. But also I think there's a few negatives to it. I think the quality is not as good as the other options. So there is sort of a trade-off there between you're saving time and money. And maybe the look isn't particularly good. I think certain people won't sit and watch a conversation between two people like through webcams as much as they would have done maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I think people have sort of flashbacks through COVID of having so many Zoom meetings and Zoom quizzes that they don't want to watch podcast after podcast of people talking through webcams. So I think there are positives and negatives to shooting your podcast online.
The problem is it's not visually as engaging when it's just two people talking. You know, it's very static in that sense. Whereas when you've got a 2 or 3 camera setup where it's live, you flick between them and this stuff in the background. It looks cool, looks nice. You know,
people react to it differently when they're in a room with someone as well. Like you think about the Trafalgar podcast we do, where the guests come and they sit down with Chase, who's presenting. They act like really animated. I know a lot of them are from acting backgrounds as well, but they're quite animated people. But their conversation does get quite animated and very energetic, I think. And I think that's a positive, having an in-person podcast.
I think you can build out more authenticity as well by allowing them to interact with people behind the cameras and stuff like that. So we with Trafalgar Education, we built it so that they have a kind of a key feature where one of the students from Stagecoach, so one of the brands underneath the Trafalgar Education sort of house of franchises. Umbrella, that's it, the franchise and Umbrella. So they get one of the kids they record a video of them asking questions to the guest. And so Laura then pops on screen with a little iPad and a quick hi to the camera, and the guest will interact with Laura, and it works really nicely. Like it shows you that it's not all just staged. It's actually, you know, real human beings sitting down and having a chat. So it's quite nice. But also this just in terms of communication, there's different levels of communication, right? Like if you communicate with people via email, things can be misinterpreted, misread slightly. And I'm not looking at you now, right? Like particularly,
I'm looking at a camera.
I'm looking at a camera. I'm talking elsewhere. So I'm not picking up on some of those visual cues. So you don't have the same level of chemistry. So it does elevate it a bit. But for a quick and easy approach, using software like Riverside is great because it also at the back end it feeds out a little bit of some of the clips for you as well that you can produce. So that the thing that you need to spend on it is not so much money, it's the time.
Yeah. So the next option is hiring a podcast studio. So this can mean just hiring the space of a podcast studio or hiring the podcast studio with the team in it. So the setup will already be there. There'll be cameras, multiple cameras. So if we're talking about the studio I've got here, it would be like we create a set for you that's very much like for your podcast. So there will be props and maybe photos on the wall that are relevant to your business, maybe books on the shelves that are relevant to your business, like little touches like that. And it would look amazing. So there's positives to that would be you sort of go to it and maybe like once a month or once a quarter you go and record a certain amount of episodes and everything's done for you. It's all like looks great, sounds great. Negatives to that, cost might be an issue there. Traveling to the location, getting guests to travel to the location might be an issue as well.
And it's not your environment, it's not your brand. It can feel slightly more staged. I mean, I've done them, and to give people an idea on cost, it depends on how many cameras you want. It depends on how many mics you want. Depends on the quality of the cameras. But they'll charge anything from like £100 to £250 for 1 hour. That's for a London podcast studio, by the way. The other challenge that I've come across is sometimes they shut down, and then you've lost your studio, you've lost your set. So there can be a bit of a challenge on that front, But something we haven't talked about enough yet, but I think it's important to say, is kind of the structure. So we know how to kind of put together a strategy and a structure for podcasting, and it kind of needs its own marketing plan and an own marketing strategy. So it's not, let's just record one quickly. I think you have to go in with a core theme, maybe include certain features within the podcast itself. So whilst you can go external and use a studio, you still got to come up with the strategy yourself. Also, you touched on it. Do you do this weekly? Do you record monthly and try and build up a stack of content that you then repurpose further on down the line? Some of these podcast studios do offer editing support as well, so that's an option, but again, can be a little bit pricey. It depends on where you go and who you find.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems I've seen with people that try to do podcasts is that they try to do like 2 or 3 episodes and then drop off. And I think a really good way of avoiding that drop off is to either do what Trafalgar have done, and they've like invested in 12 months and they've sort of paid for it all up front, and we booked rough dates. We know what dates we're going to be recording on throughout the month, and then the team get the guests in. And then secondly, another option, which I think this is what I did last week actually, this is what I sort of alluded to earlier, was I went to a franchise conference and then I had a side room where I set up a little set. This is with the franchising centre, and we just had throughout the day people come in and record episodes. So I think we got like 8 conversations. So that's 8 conversations that we can put out throughout the next year that we wouldn't have otherwise. And I was literally there from about 9 in the morning and I left about 3 p.m. So I was there for about 6 hours, and we just recorded solidly for 6 hours. And for them, it was just like 2 people leaving the room at a time. So they weren't really missing a lot. But for 6 hours, they've now got like 8 months worth of content. So if you've got a franchise conference, that's a really good opportunity to like just book a little side room, get a podcast set up there, and then just record as much as you possibly can. And interestingly, Franchising Centre, they didn't really want to record podcast episodes. They wanted more sort of podcast clips. But in the end, they were like, these would actually be really good podcast episodes. So it was just sort of, we're going to ask questions and then use them as individual clips. And it turned into, actually, we're going to use these as episodes and the clips as well. So, so that's literally a day throughout the year, and then you've got a year's worth of content potentially at the end of it.
Yeah, and I think actually thinking about it, we've not really touched too much on the types of podcast episodes you can have as well, right? Because some people, I think, when they think podcast, they think of it's got to have lots of different features, be something fun and all of that. But actually, it can just be an interview-based podcast with your franchisees, with your suppliers, with end clients, and it could just be about your brand, and call it the My Company or My Franchise podcast, and it can just be leveraged throughout that sales process, franchise recruitment process, but also go onto YouTube, so it's available for people to find at the front end. Go on TikTok and LinkedIn and Facebook and everywhere else, Instagram, or you can. So it depends on the goal, and that's why I guess I'm talking about strategy is important. For Trafalgar Education, it is about just raising awareness of who Trafalgar Education are, and so they're typically trying to find guests who have got a higher profile, a fairly high profile, so they can get the volume of people in. For Jim's group, I know they predominantly focus on interviewing their franchisees because they want to build out that story for prospective franchisees. So depends on the goal, can depend on the style, and that's why I'm saying the strategy is quite an important thing to do. But if it's going to be weekly, it might make more sense to do something that is on Riverside, on Zoom or wherever it may be. If it's monthly and actually you want to create good looking content, going into a studio is good. The conference side is probably the final bit that we wanted to talk about, isn't it? Which is having it at your offices or at your site or at your store or at a conference. So it's on site somewhere where it's within the franchisee's environment. That, I think you can then tie into it additional content. So if you've got, like you said, 9 till 3, if you've got 2 hours at the end of the day, mate, you could add in extra bits of
Yeah.
content where you just do some Instagram, TikTok style interviews with the founder. Maybe go on the street outside and just start asking people questions with a microphone and turn that into content. So actually, yes,
Yeah.
a podcast day is good, but actually you can fit some other bits and pieces around it. Capture B-roll from the conference and do a bit of photography. There's all sorts of things you can pack in, but I would plan, if I was to think of wanting monthly long form content, which you can then repurpose, maybe look at doing 4 to 6 per year and just fill it up with podcast interviews and anything else you can fit into that day, and just see them as content days, minimizing the time for the staff, for
The
founder
franchisees as well. Yeah.
Franchisees, yeah.
And like if you're getting franchisees on your podcast, you're not worried about views, and you're not looking at like, oh, I haven't got like thousands of views. You're just looking for the right people to watch it. So it might be even like in the tens or in the low hundreds of people that are watching it, but those are really targeted of people that are going to be watching it, and they're the 100 or so people that you really do want to be watching it. So I think you don't really look at the views or worry about how many people are watching it. It's just like getting the right people to watch it, and that's why you would get franchisees on board. Going back to like the conference as well, something I did the other week was for Fast Signs, at the Fast Signs like yearly conference, and we had like a roving reporter, so someone on camera just with a microphone going up to people and talking to them. So we did a podcast last year where we sort of brought franchisees to one side, put like the Leeds franchisee with a Manchester franchisee, and just got them to talk to each other about their experiences. And then this year we just went around up to them at the conference, just talking to them about like their experience. So that's a really good way of just getting like little clips as well.
You could turn that into a 15-minute podcast.
Yeah.
So it could be something along the lines of there's somebody that I know who's works within the art world, and he uses my art broker he's done work for, and they use a paintbrush, and they go with a microphone clipped on there, and they go up to people in the street saying, what's your favourite painting? If you could own one painting, what would it be? But you could change that topic each time, but just go out there on the street and ask somebody a question, and then your podcast is, this week we decided to find out from the art world what is such and such, and then you just hear from the people on the street giving their question, and it could just be a 15-minute podcast that's really relevant. So how can we apply that to a franchise brand? I don't know. What do you think of franchising as one? If you could own one franchise, what would it be? Yeah. Just change the topic each week, month, whenever it is.
What was the support like? What's the ongoing learning like? How are you supported now? How do you support the other franchisees within the network? And there's so much.
It becomes your frequently asked questions, but in a more interesting and engaging format that people can digest without having to sit at a laptop or on their phone. They can do the cleaning while they're listening and absorbing this information, right? And just listen through all 10 episodes that you've got built out as a little FAQs kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah. There's stuff like that you could do.
That was very interesting, but the most surprising thing I heard there was you've got an art broker.
No, I don't have an art broker. I know somebody who's in the art world who's done work for my art broker at the company. Okay. Not my art broker. Nice.
Cool.
Nice.
Let's move on.
Yeah. Okay, so we've obviously put this together to try and help people to understand how they might be able to do it themselves. But we have a solution that we offer as well, especially off the back of Daniel Priestley. We kind of realised that some of you might want to be the key person of influence and actually find ways to properly utilise podcasts to generate more franchisees, or at least convert more high quality ones. And so we've been doing this for a while, just in different guises. And so we decided actually we should put some packages together, and we thought this is a good opportunity to share them with you. So, yeah, I keep hijacking, but I'm going to let you start, Mark.
Well, yeah, as we said, like there's 3 packages, the online packages, the studio package, and the on-site package. We've gone through kind of like what they would be. And yeah, we've got various options there. So the online one would be, we sort of record everything on Riverside and then do all the back end stuff for you. So that's very, very limited time intensive for anyone who wants to do that. And then the studio. So I've got.
Hold on. I've got to stop you, man.
Go on.
With all of these packages, there is all the support in planning it out accurately, making sure that it's actually hitting the mark as to what you want to achieve and targeted towards your ideal franchisee avatar, because I think that's half of it, right? Anyone can jump on a Zoom and click record, but actually getting it right, knowing how to distribute it in the right way.
Do.
Yeah, exactly. That's why don't devalue what I do, man.
Yeah, I'm doing all the video stuff and all the editing, and then Ed is doing all the franchise.
All the copywriting around it as well,
messaging.
The episode notes. Some of this we can build out bespoke packages that go beyond this, where actually we then put together a social media strategy and plan where we write all the content for that as well. So it could be really minimal touch, but yeah, sorry, Mark. Yeah. I had to jump in and say it.
That's the thing.
All
that's
the pre-recording stuff. Yeah.
I'm always like, I'm the most important because I'm doing all the editing. But yeah, you do all the back end stuff that I have no interest in. So that's why we're a good team. So the studio stuff. So I've got a studio here in Hampshire, as you can see behind me, but I'll be moving to a slightly bigger and better studio on the 1st of January. So that's exciting as well. So there'll be various podcast setups in that space. So lots of different options for recording a studio podcast within the studio coming up next year. And then on site, which is very similar to the studio option, but we come to you, which I think is worked really well for Trafalgar so far, and works really well when I've done loads of conferences over the years, where we go to a conference or we go to the office or the place of work of the people. So I think that works really well as well. And I think all those packages like this, there's various franchises will find somewhere they can fit within those.
Yeah, and I'd say it can be tweaked, right? Like, I think it's
not set in stone.
Where we're talking about actually if we just include podcasting into a overall content marketing strategy where we're building that trust engine and it's not all just podcasts, we want to build out some other clips and other bits of content that could just fill that feed. So maybe 3 times a week you've got a post that's not all podcasts, it's a variation of stuff in there as well. I think we can build out packages, for example, starting from 20,000 for the year where we do all of that for you. We just need 4 days throughout the year where you're there to be filmed and or you and your team or your franchisees are there so that we capture that content and then repurpose it so it becomes a very low touch thing. So that might be for, more established brands, but those options are there. So these are guidelines, but that's kind of what you'd be looking at for online studio and on-site kind of podcasts. So, yeah.
Questions. We do have one question in the comments.
We've got a couple, mate. Go on, you read the one you've seen first.
I've seen one. Okay. Where are you seeing? I'm not seeing them on Riverside. I've seen Simon Wise. Looking at the franchise sales funnel, who is the most responsive to watch the podcast, top, middle, or bottom?
It depends on what. Yeah, I would say it's probably someone in the middle. That said, so I was at the It's Easy annual conference yesterday and the night before for their awards evening, and I was sat next to somebody who's been with the brand for 6 months, and he said to me that, "Oh, it's you," is what he said, and I was like, "Yeah, hi, how are you? I'm Ed. What's your name?" He's like, "Alan." So, okay, what do you mean it's me? He said, well, as part of the kind of process and learning about the franchise opportunity, I saw your interview with one of the other franchisees, and actually it was one of the main reasons why I decided, this is something I want to go ahead with. And he watched that kind of after a discovery meeting before he went and met the team face to face and things like that. But because he heard the franchisee's story and what we do in the interviews that I do with, or the podcast that I do with It's Easy, it's a continuation of the disenfranchised, actually. They wanted a third-party person to be asking the questions, and so I asked their franchisees questions, and I do it on online actually. Just go through their story. So from what was your first job through to, you know, a few touch points in their career, so you get to know the person pretty well. Why did you decide to leave what you're doing and go into starting up your own business, and why it's easy, and then a few bits around it's easy. What's your future plans? That's basically the premise of it. I guess because it's that third party person asking the questions, it feels so much more authentic, right? There's no it's easy person on there pitching away. Some of the franchisees are, you know, they don't hold back. That it's difficult. The first month I had nothing. You know, that sort of stuff is really real. And when it's the head office team kind of leading that, you feels like it's staged. But him talking to me and me laughing and say, "Come on, man, you know, you must have done all right after that, though." That helps. So yeah, that's another angle that's interesting. But yeah, I'd say he was midpoint that it worked really well for them, and they've referenced that a few of their franchisees have said that actually those podcasts are really useful after they've got to know the business a little bit. But it's almost like a franchisee testimonial without taking up the franchisee's time. They still meet the franchisees at a later point, you know, before they sign, but that's important. The other interesting one that this franchise it's had an impact on franchise brands is Deborah Salisbury from The Reading Doctor. So she hands out the interview that I did with her a couple of years ago. She was super nervous, but it was so good because you just saw it was all raw emotion coming from her, and she told her story, her journey through her life, and talked about why she does what she does. And she sends that out to every prospect before they've had a long conversation, before they've gone through the process. And she says, you have to watch this because you have to understand why. And she's told me it's actually been referenced by a lot of the franchisees that she takes on board, and say to her, and they're saying to her, I was almost bought before I've even joined you because I saw the passion, I saw your why, I understood you before I'd even met you properly, you know, and got to know the business opportunity. So actually that was a really effective at the front end as well. The latter stages, I think probably not so much. It depends. I think where you might use it at a latter stage, or a clip from a podcast at a latter stage, would be if I know all the pain points of the prospective franchisee and I've gone through and I've tried to address them. But if they come to me in one of the last conversations and say, actually, I am still worried about making the transition from being an accountant into a website designer or into art class provider, whatever it is, find that franchisee interview or clip where that has been addressed already. So there's likely a franchisee within your network who's already gone through some form of career change, and then if you've asked them the right questions, they'll talk about the training. The training helped put me at ease, and it made me, you know, got me to that point where I was actually feeling like I was confident to go out there and do it, you know, on my own. That's so powerful, right? Like, as I overcoming those final objections. So I haven't answered the question fully there, Simon. I've said all of the stages, haven't I? But possibly the midpoint, I'd say. Possibly the midpoint, if I was to pick one.
What other questions we got? Because I can't see any others. But you must see them on your end because you're this is your Riverside.
Yeah. So I've got one from Harvey here as well. So bless him, he's been driving and listening, and he's pulled over so he can ask a question. So, if you're advising a franchise on the long-form content, is there a good way to plan that content so it's easier to split up into short-form content? I mean, you used to have a bash at this, mate.
I think that just sort of comes along naturally. So you will just sort of find clips, and this works really well with Trafalgar as well, because they have Ingrid who sort of goes through as we're recording, and she makes notes, and then we
both do.
yeah. So yeah, Ed and Ingrid go through as we're going through, and they just make notes and then highlight them for me to clip. So I think that works really well. And then, or I will just notice, I go, that's interesting or that's relevant, because I sort of know the subject matter all right, and I'll put that in. But so whether you've got somebody within the team, or Ed does it, or you just sort of trust the process of it, there will be stuff that just automatically can work really well as clips because it's an interesting conversation. So, and I think like any question that gets asked will be like, that's the start of a clip. That's the start of a clip. So I think that will work really well as well. So I don't think there's, you don't really plan
I think there's
but
both.
it just sort of naturally happens.
I think there's both. I think you can plan it, and I would say this because this is my part of the operation, right? But I would say that it all starts with your ideal franchisee avatar. So nail down exactly who they are and where they're consuming content, or where to find them. Nail down what are their fears and what are their motivations, and those become your topics. So if you know people are actually...
Yeah, those are the questions you'd ask, yeah.
Yeah, it's the frequently asked questions, it's the fears, it's the motivations. You want to try and draw some of that out, especially if you're going down the strategy of interviewing franchisees as part of the podcast, or how did they achieve XYZ is the core thing, but try and fit in there. So what worried you before you actually started your business? Day one, what did it look like? Were you worried about what was going to happen? How did you start to overcome the challenges of generating clients or generating customers? If you know that's a fear for somebody from your ideal franchisee avatar, make sure those questions are in there. So that's how I would plan out what the content is going to be at the back end, because that then can be a clip in itself. Like you say, if you're just having a conversation, naturally some other stuff will come out of it as well. But I would plan that out. And one thing that you can do within a podcast is have a featured moment as well. So for my new podcast, the franchise podcast, I just want to get to know the people and just showcase that we're all humans within the industry and actually decent people. So we talk about music and everything else. But I have something called a moment where I say, right, it's time to bang the drum for franchising. And it's almost two or three staged questions where I say, right, prepare what you're going to say beforehand, and I'm going to ask you, what would you like to turn the volume up on in franchising? What would you like to turn the volume down on in franchising? And it's just putting a feature around some of those kind of core questions that I want to ask everybody, so that I make sure it's about franchising at some point, because otherwise I could waffle on for an hour and a half for these people and get nothing franchising out of them. So you can make a feature out of it that suits what it is that you're doing, but I would just make sure that you're focusing on motivations, fears, things that they love to do, and maybe some of your benefits, your core benefits as well. Like,
yeah, I think we spoke about it earlier as well, but like even talking about the horrible, nasty stuff that no one really ever talks about, getting that's really helps build trust as well, because no one else is talking about it.
Yeah, it could also be a learning piece as well for you. The thing is, podcasts can be edited afterwards, right? It's better to try and keep them in its entirety. But if something happens where I don't want to talk about this actually, and I don't think you're going to like the answer, or they say something so outrageous it's damaging to the brand overall, like, you can clip that out, right? That is something you can do. So try it. Like, what's the worst thing about being a franchisee? So I think normally people try and give nice answers, don't they? So I don't know. I'd go with that.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. Any more questions? Do you want to move it on to the next slide so people can see that QR code as well, if you want to find out more? And we'll answer any more questions.
Sure. Yes. So yeah, we've got a QR code.
If you want to find out more, there is a QR code to find out about the offers that we're offering. So feel free to go to that and then find out a little bit more about what we've been talking about.
Yeah. No.
Are there any other questions?
I don't know. I think there might be. I don't know if you've got any on your side that you can see, but besides this QR code, if you just want to reach out to me or Mark as well, you'll find us on LinkedIn and just drop us a message on there. We'd be happy to have a chat.
We've kind of covered the ones I've got. I had backup questions. So I said, how do we choose guests? We've kind of gone through that. What if I hate how I sound on camera? We've kind of gone through that. I've got a good example of that if you want to hear that.
Go on then. Well, I feel like I have to now.
Yeah, okay. I was interviewing someone last week, or maybe probably about 3 weeks ago now, and I was trying to ask him the questions that I was asking him, and he was just like, no, can't do this, can't do it. And I was like, how am I going to get around this? So I just said, right, do you like football? And he went, yeah. And I went, who do you support? And he said Chelsea. So I was like, right, brilliant, because I'm a Chelsea fan as well. But if he'd have said Tottenham, then I'd have still had a conversation about Tottenham. And I think just find like common ground you can talk about just to get them used to talking on camera. And then we spoke about Chelsea for about 20 minutes, and I still had the camera on. And then I just asked, after like 20 minutes, I just asked him the first question I wanted to ask him, and he just carried on asking totally naturally. So by having that little time on camera where we were just talking about something he was totally confident in talking about, he just eased into it and forgot the camera was there. And I think that went really, really well. So if you just generally, if you're on camera and need some advice, just find some common ground with the person behind the camera, talk about that for a bit, and then you're away, I think.
Yeah, no, it's good. That's I'm terrible in front of camera, by the way. Like, when I've got something that I have to say, I stutter because I try and remember all the words. And what I find is, if somebody is over prepared, so if you're going to have somebody on a podcast, don't give them too many questions to think about. No. Just come up with something around this, but just answer them. Just have the conversation in a natural flowing state, because otherwise people start to put the professional face on and go, well, we're great because of X, Y, Z, and those kinds of things, you know, and it doesn't come across as well. So yeah, getting them in a natural state is really good tip.
I think the presenter needs to be prepared. So the presenter needs to know about the person they're interviewing and know what they want to ask, and not just sort of wing it. I think Chase with Trafalgar is really well prepared. That works really well. Like, he knows some like ins and outs of every guest, and he knows what to ask. He knows history about them and stuff. So I think that works really well. But don't prepare the guest too much, because then they will overthink it, and they might even come up with a script on a bit of paper, and they're like, "Where do you want me to put the bit of paper? I need to remember exactly what's written on this bit of paper." So just by easing them into it and just saying, like, we're just having a conversation, that's far more natural. And I think that works really well. Next question I've got, Ed, is how often should the episodes be released?
Oof. So that's a difficult one. It depends on time and money, basically, because it can be time consuming, whichever way you look at it. And I guess that just goes back to that strategy piece. Weekly is going to get you in front of people more often, and it is going to have a bigger impact than monthly, I would say, in the long run. A month can be a long time in between, but actually it depends. I think if you just want it as a kind of brand awareness piece that you then repurpose into lots of other bits of content that then becomes your weekly weekly touch points, that's okay. If you want it weekly, you think you're going to spend every half hour doing something, it takes up more time, but it can be more beneficial, right? If you're doing a podcast day quarterly, you probably need to up that to every 6 times, or reduce the amount of time you spend on each podcast. So an hourly long podcast every week, yeah, it could be quite tough and time consuming.
So talking about like weekly, a way that you could post stuff weekly, I'm going back to when I filmed with the Creation Station earlier in the year. I was there for like a day at the conference about a new session they were doing. So they had all the franchisees there, and we interviewed all the franchisees, and I interviewed probably about 20 of them, and we used each question as a short bit of content. And then by the end of it, I had over I think it was like over 120 little clips. So that is so much content they can post out over a certain amount of weeks. And if we were doing like long form content as well, like there would have been like long form content and short form content to put out. So it's just like how you want to use it.
I think you can have a monthly one that is the long form that then breaks down into short form bits that you dot in throughout.
I think if you start with long form, yeah, exactly.
But weekly, I don't know. I think it needs to be a slightly different dynamic. It can't, unless you've got a lot of franchisees, you're going to run out of them really quickly. So it needs to be more. So I do a podcast with Ben Brooks from Agency Express. This is just we openly admit it's a bit of a vanity project. It's just the excuse for us to share music with each other, have a chat, and if anyone else wants to listen in, that's great as well. when you're talking about something like music, it's really easy to do something on a weekly basis because we could just talk about our tracks of the week and our musical experiences throughout life, and we throw in a bit of business stuff as well. But that's a lot easier when there's just two people that are always talking. So it depends, right? Like you could have it as an update thing that you do on a weekly basis where you just talk about, so what's been going on at XYZ franchise today? So we've had about 20 conversations with prospective franchisees over the last week. Unbelievable. It's been amazing. We've been working on developing a new system. Whatever it is, it's more like it's almost like a live insight. That might work as a weekly kind of podcast, right? Yeah. But who's going to be interested in it? That's another challenge. I don't know. I think I'd probably opt for monthly for most franchisors, but if it's
then you've got your short form on top of that you can get from each long form. I think that works really well.
But I think if you want to go down that weekly route, it just needs a slightly different strategy is all.
Yeah. Cool. That's all the questions I've got, Ed.
Nice. Happy days. Well, we've gone way over an hour, so it looks like we've still got some people with us. So thank you very much for listening to the end. So that's pretty much it. If anybody has any jazzy music, nice. So if anybody has any other questions they want to ask us, they did want to ask in the session, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to jump on a call, have a chat, and go from there. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. And Merry Christmas as well, everyone.
Oh yeah, geez. I better go get some presents. Nice one. Cheers, guys. See you later. Bye.